Batman is extremely careful with who he trusts. The respect of the Caped Crusader is not ever given lightly or without careful consideration. But once, just once, a young boy managed to gain the Bat's confidence with just a look. This is the story of Jason Todd, better known now as the Red Hood, the second person ever to assume the mantle of Robin. Though his reputation may precede him as the black sheep of the Bat family, there's a lot more to Jason than meets the eye. He is perhaps one of the most tragic and compelling characters ever to come out of the Batman mythos, and he's currently one of the most bad. Each time he gets knocked down, somehow, this Robin finds the strength to get back up again, no matter what it takes. Jason may be gruff, even disagreeable at times, but he's one of the bravest and most dedicated protectors Gotham City has ever seen. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what Batman saw in him in the first place. Number 1. Learning to fly. We first meet Jason Todd where the boy spent all of his early childhood, the mean streets of Gotham City. And while Jason was still young when he first met the Bat, he'd had a lifetime of grief packed into his short upbringing. His mother, Catherine Todd, had tragically overdosed when Jason was a boy, and his father, Willis, had recently disappeared after taking an enforcement job with Two-Face. This left little Jason all on his own from an extremely young age in one of the darkest and toughest cities on the planet, all of which led the young orphan into Crime Alley one fateful night, where he was met with one of the rarest sights in the city, the Batmobile, parked and unoccupied. When Batman returned from his night of patrolling, he found Jason attempting to loot the tires off the vehicle. Now, in most cases, this would be just about the last place anyone in Gotham would want to find themselves. But something out of the ordinary happened that night. Batman saw something in this scrappy, wily young boy. Who knows what exactly it was about Jason Todd that night that caught Batman's attention? But it's safe to say Jason shares a lot of qualities with his mentor and adopted father. While the first Robin, Richard Grayson, was simply passing through Gotham with the circus when the city took his parents from him, Jason spent his whole life walking the streets of Gotham. Bruce probably couldn't help seeing himself in the boy. An ironclad determination and a refusal to quit that comes from a life of grief and hardship. While Jason shared neither Dick's inherent athleticism nor his high-level acrobatic training, staring down at this young boy jacking the tires from the Batmobile, Batman instantly knew this kid would make the perfect successor as the Boy Wonder. Impressive, considering the boy came into the cave with nearly no previous experience except that which he'd learned on the streets. In fact, during Jason's first outing as Robin, when Commissioner Gordon questioned Batman's decision to team up with another child, Batman responded, "This child is older than both of us, not to mention tougher." Jason's unassailable resolve and sheer force of will helped him excel in training as he sought to become a crime fighter and combatant of the same caliber as his mentor and his predecessor. But these tenacious qualities hid something within him. A deep, burning rage and bottomless well of fury bubbled inside the young Bat trainee. Finally, he was being given the tools to make some change in the city that had tormented him his entire childhood. The question lingered on Batman's peers' minds as to whether or not this new radical, rebellious Robin had the temperament for the job. But Batman and Alfred always had faith that the boy could overcome his worst demons and put his untamable spirit towards making the world a better place. After all, an angry, young boy named Bruce Wayne once did just that. But before we see how little Jason took to his new role as the Boy Wonder, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload. And smash that like button for some plot armor today. And get ready, dear viewers, because the young Jason story is only just beginning. 2. The dynamic duo. As mentioned before, Jason was a riotous, defiant, and subversive Robin in all the right ways. While the first Robin had been polite, compassionate, and almost gentle in his demeanor, Jason had a rebellious streak that carried with him from the back alleys to the rooftops. In some ways, this occasionally made him a more difficult partner for Batman to work with than Dick, who had been eager to please when he started in the role. But Jason's natural unruliness made him an exceptional and undeniably effective Robin in his own right. He and Batman's relationship made for a unique symbiosis in which both knew they could always trust each other to have the other's back. While the original Robin had defined the Boy Wonder's role as a flitting distraction of carefully controlled chaos to mask the approach of the Bat, Jason's Robin flipped the script by being just as forceful, powerful, and resolute as the Bat himself. It seemed, as Jason settled into the role, that nothing could possibly take this young force of nature down. But Jason also displayed a worrying lack of devotion to Batman's vow of justice. Jason couldn't square how Batman could continue to apprehend criminals only for them to later escape and spread their poison once more. The law, Jason felt, wasn't holding up their end of the bargain. Batman had always been a symbol of justice, of vengeance. But the new Robin quickly began to feel that his efforts were being foiled by a system that refused to improve. A city whose corruption refused to keep criminals off the streets and its citizens safe. No moment summed up Jason's views on what criminals deserved more than the case of Felipe Garzonas, which was one of the most controversial moments in his tenure as Robin. Felipe was a well-known diplomat's son who was living in Gotham at the time. When Batman and Robin investigate a woman's scream to find Felipe had forced himself onto a woman in the comfort of his high-rise apartment, they immediately take him into custody. It turns out that Felipe had sexually assaulted the woman, Gloria Stanson, once before, but never saw any repercussions. "Well, he won't get away with it this time, Miss Stanson," Robin assured the traumatized victim. "We caught him dead to rights. Felipe's about to spend some hard time." Unfortunately, as Commissioner Gordon quickly explained, Felipe's father's work extended diplomatic immunity to his son, all but guaranteeing his permanent release. Robin was beside himself with anger and spent the next few nights anxiously pacing until Felipe made another misstep, when the dynamic duo busted Felipe a second time, this time on drug charges. He was forced to leave the country, but not before Felipe calls Gloria and makes one last hideous threat on his way out of town. When Robin later went to check on Gloria, he found the poor woman hanging from her rafters, evidently overcome by Felipe's threats. Robin charges after the man. Jason finds him on the fire escape of his high-rise apartment and confronts him head-on. When Batman arrives, he's just in time to watch Felipe's body fall to the streets below, killing him instantly. Batman looks coldly at Robin. "Robin, what happened?" he bellowed. Jason looks up at his mentor in silence. "Robin, did Felipe fall, or was he pushed?" Batman asked again. "I guess I spooked him," Jason replied with the same grit in his voice. "He slipped." But as much as the case of Felipe Garzonas exhibits Jason's darker tendencies, it also proves just how exceptional of a Robin he was as well. When Felipe's father, as revenge for the death of his son, kidnapped Commissioner Gordon, Batman initially tried to keep Robin out of the case, understanding that his personal baggage could get in the way of objectivity. But Jason was more attentive than Batman had realized. Robin knew something was amiss and quietly tailed Batman to the rendezvous point. But when one of the sentries gives away Batman's position, the Dark Knight detective finds himself with a small army's worth of weapons trained on him. Just as the drug traffickers begin squeezing their trigger fingers, a batarang flies out of the dark and nicks one in the arm. With Robin having created the perfect distraction, Batman leaps into action without hesitation. Gordon, Batman, and Robin are then able to easily dispatch the rest of Garzonas' henchmen in the chaos. When the dust cleared, Robin approached Batman amidst the rubble. took care of this cut-rate bad guy for you," the Boy Wonder said. "You okay?" "Yes, fine. Thanks," Batman replied. "Who's the old guy with the Uzi?" Robin asked, and Batman responded without looking back at his partner. "His name was Jose Garzonas. He was Felipe's father, Robin. For every action in this universe, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Consequences, Robin. There's no escaping them." Jason is many things: loyal, devoted, and dependable. He loved Batman as a father, and Batman loved him as a son. But Jason was not forgiving. Not to those he deemed were harming others, taking advantage of those who had less than they did. Jason's brand of vengeance was always more brutal, a shade darker than Batman's. And before long, the young Boy Wonder would embrace that darkness entirely. Number 3. Death in the Family. One of the most famous and consequential Batman stories ever told revolves around the end of Jason's time as Robin. The Death in the Family storyline would reverberate onwards throughout Batman's history as one of the most defining moments for the character and all those around him. Rarely does a storyline fundamentally change a character to their core, but Jason Todd's final mission as the Boy Wonder did just that. Both Batman and Jason would never be the same. The tragic tale starts out with Jason, well into his tenure as Robin at this point, realizing that Catherine Todd was not in fact his biological mother. His biological mother, it's revealed, might actually be alive and well. This news sends Jason on a frantic quest across the world to find his long-lost mother, with Bruce at his side. They narrow down the field to 3 women, including one Lady Shiva. But in the end, the dynamic duo narrows down their search to a foreign aid worker named Sheila Haywood, who works in Ethiopia. Traveling there as quickly as they could, Jason is overjoyed as he's reuniting with his birth mother. Sheila was understandably shocked by the sudden appearance of her long-lost son, but the reunion was joyful nonetheless. Their trip begins to turn sour when Jason and Bruce start to realize that the Joker is somehow involved with this Ethiopian assistance camp. Not only this, but the Joker is specifically threatening Sheila with supplying the Clown Prince of Crime with medical supplies. As it turns out, Sheila herself was caught skimming off the top of the funding the camp had been receiving and was thus being blackmailed by the Joker in order to buy his silence. Once Jason reveals his secret identity as the Boy Wonder to his birth mother, she decides to turn the boy over to the Joker in the hopes of buying herself out from under her blackmail once and for all, stabbing her long-lost son in the back just days after being reunited with the boy. Robin is squirreled away under Bruce's very nose to a nearby warehouse where Joker's operations are centered. In what is now one of the most infamous and brutal scenes in Batman history, the Joker proceeds to beat Jason within an inch of his life again and again with a crowbar. Once the torture is complete, Jason lies beaten and bruised on the ground, barely breathing. The Joker orders his goons to tie up Sheila as well, and he leaves both the Boy Wonder and his mother in the warehouse with a ticking time bomb. This whole time, naturally, Batman had been barreling as quickly as he can towards his captured sidekick, but tragically, he would arrive just seconds too late. Inside the warehouse, in his final moments, Jason was able to fight through his injuries and untie Sheila, hoping she would run and save herself. Sheila opted, in a moment of motherly love, to try to help Jason to his feet. The two barely managed to make it to the door in the countdown's final seconds, only to find the exit locked. As Batman approached the warehouse, he could only watch as the entire building exploded in a blast of smoke and flames. The Caped Crusader dove into the rubble of the destroyed site, desperately hoping to see any signs of life. First, Batman found Sheila, who told him of Jason's heroic final moments. Sheila succumbed to her wounds in Bruce's arms, and it wasn't until he had set her body to the ground that he would find the crumpled, bloodied, broken body of his beloved sidekick. Jason's death proved more than just a mere bruise to Batman's reputation. Batman took the loss of his second adopted son extremely hard. In the aftermath of Jason's death, Batman became increasingly brutal, losing all semblance of the restraint he once tried so hard to instill in the second Robin. In Jason's absence, the Batman became an even darker presence than he once was in the streets of Gotham, often being unable to stop himself from going too far when doling out violence to criminals and supervillains. Batman would always consider Jason's death one of, if not his greatest, failures. While the death of Bruce's parents drove him to the cape and cowl in the first place, the first death of one of his children left an entirely different mark on the man. Jason's Robin costume famously was hung up in the Batcave permanently so as to never forget the sacrifice the boy made. And never again would Batman so quickly allow a protege from training to enter the field. Future partners of the Bat would be put through impossibly rigorous tests before they were considered ready for patrol, all to avoid another situation like Jason's. Ironically enough, Batman's grief would eventually darken his days so noticeably that the next Robin, Tim Drake, would be spurred into action on Bruce's behalf. But that's a tale for another time. Robin's death at the hands of the Joker would for years be the last anyone heard of Jason Todd. But Jason's story was far from over. Number 4. The Red Hood Rises. The road to Jason's return was long and fraught with difficulty. Originally, it was the reality-altering events depicted in Crisis on Infinite Earths that caused the long-dead corpse of Jason Todd to suddenly draw breath once again. Confused, terrified, and suffocating in his buried casket, Jason frantically and desperately digs himself free of his grave. But his revival did not come without drawbacks. Jason's mind was heavily damaged in the transition from death back to the land of the living. Jason wandered aimlessly through the woods, far from the site of his burial, such that when he was eventually found and hospitalized, there was no evidence to connect him to the grave he had climbed out of. After coming out of a coma, Jason once again found himself struggling and without a home on the streets of Gotham. Eventually, a low-level ex-criminal witnessed Jason fending for himself and recognized the fluid motion of the famous Boy Wonder. However, rather than this discovery making its way to the Dark Knight, it instead traveled through underground back channels to one Talia al Ghul. Talia took it upon herself to scoop up the destitute, amnesiac ex-Robin. It's unclear as to how much Talia's actions during this time were born from her genuine love for Bruce, and how much she was incentivized by the tactical advantage of having a Robin in her care. Regardless, Talia brought Jason to the League of Assassins, where the mute, seemingly mindless Jason was tested and nursed back to full health. Still, something was missing. Some moments of rare emotional response seemed to indicate that Jason was still inside somewhere, but largely, the revived Robin was unable to communicate or emote at all. Finding herself out of options and perhaps feeling a pinch of motherly compassion for the son of her beloved, Talia took it upon herself to hurl Jason into the Lazarus Pit. The dark and powerful forces of the pit worked their magic on Jason, giving the second Robin back his memories and his soul. But again, the transformation was not without its costs. The experience was not only extremely traumatic for Jason, but it also led to his immediate and forcible removal from the League of Assassins compound, as Ra's al Ghul had not given his blessing for this experiment and was irate at his daughter for her actions. Jason was once again on his own, but this time he had his wits about him. Talia gave him a few resources at his disposal, as well as newspapers detailing all he had missed in Gotham in his absence. The discovery that not only had Batman spared the Joker's life after his murder, but that he'd been replaced as Robin sent Jason over the edge. Before he returned to Gotham, however, Jason made some moves abroad in preparation for his homecoming. For one, he went on a Bruce Wayne-esque quest in search of the best military, technical, and combat training the world had to offer. Secondly, in his travels, Jason happens upon someone who knows the location of one of the planet's most wanted men, the Joker. After kidnapping the Joker and secretly holding him captive, Jason finally decides it's time to head home. Initially, Jason teams up with villains Hush, Clayface, and the Riddler to torment Batman with the possibility of the deceased Robin's return. But Jason allows Clayface to pretend to have been impersonating him, keeping his revival a secret. Jason wouldn't truly reappear in earnest until a strange new player in Gotham named the Red Hood began terrorizing the criminal element with brutal, merciless tactics and consolidating power under his own rule. The Red Hood, named after one of the Joker's original criminal aliases, started seriously threatening the balance power in Gotham, taking over many criminal channels for himself and decentralizing power away from the Black Mask, Gotham's undeniable criminal overlord. Unsurprisingly, this starts a manhunt for the mysterious new player in Gotham's underworld. But Jason, despite his supposed quest to become a better Batman by controlling the criminal element, has another goal in mind. When Batman finally catches up with Jason, their battle on the rooftops of Gotham would be legendary, with each proving just as formidable a foe as the other. Jason, however, had the upper hand, as Batman still believed he could save Jason and bring him back into the light. After a long and drawn-out chase, eventually, Jason leads Batman back to where it all began, Crime Alley. With a beaten Joker, tied and helpless before him, Jason and Bruce's unfinished business comes to an emotional end. Standing above a battered Red Hood, Batman's tone softens. "I know I failed you, but I tried to save you, Jason. I'm trying to save you now." Jason only gets angrier at this admission of regret. "Is that what you think this is about? You're letting me die?" The Red Hood yells at his former mentor. "Bruce, I forgave you for not saving me. But why? Why on God's green earth is he still alive?" Jason asks, pointing to a bound and captive Joker, ignoring what he's done in the past, blindly, stupidly, disregarding the entire graveyards he's filled, the thousands who have suffered, the friends he's crippled. And then, all at once, Jason's voice loses its edge only slightly as he says, I thought killing me, that I'd be the last person you'd ever let him hurt. If it had been you that he'd beat to a bloody mass, if it had been you that he left in agony, if he had taken you from this world, I would have done nothing but search the planet for this pathetic pile of evil, death-worshipping garbage and sent him off to hell." This would be the climax of Batman and the Red Hood's rivalry, their ultimate showdown. When Batman refuses to kill the Joker to make amends to Jason, the Red Hood simply replies, "Well, you won't have a choice." Jason grabs Joker and puts a gun to his head, tossing a pistol to Batman as well. "This is it! This is the time you decide. If you won't kill this psychotic piece of filth, I will. If you want to stop me, you're going to have to kill me." Batman begs Jason not to go through with this ultimatum, but the former Robin's grief-stricken mind is made up. At the final moment, Batman is able to perfectly ricochet a batarang to strike Jason in the neck, preventing him from shooting the Joker, but seriously injuring the Red Hood in the process. Immediately after, the Joker presses the discarded gun against the pile of explosives behind him and pulls the trigger. The explosion allows both the Clown Prince of Crime and the Red Hood to escape into the night. But this would certainly not be the last Batman ever saw of his adopted son. A second chance. Clearly, Jason's violent return to Bruce's life set his former protege up to become another foe in the Batman's ever-growing rogues gallery. And for a long time, the Red Hood was indeed considered a supervillain at large, working as hard as he could to take control of Gotham City and prove that the Batman was a frivolous and outdated idea. Particularly, during the battle for the cowl, Jason was positioned as an antagonist, battling tooth and nail against the rest of the Bat family for the future of the Bat. But as the years went by, Jason's fury cooled significantly. Perhaps it was his time alongside fellow outlaws Starfire and Arsenal that made Jason feel the warmth of friendship once more. Or perhaps it was the way the Bat family never lost faith in their long-lost brother and always afforded Jason chances to redeem himself when the opportunities arose. The true breaking point in Jason's angry, hostile demeanor came following the death of the family story arc during the New 52 era. After the Joker's near annihilation of the Bat family, Jason lies recuperating in Wayne Manor. When he finally wakes, Jason finds Bruce sitting by his bedside, anxiously hoping his son will pull through. The father and son embrace for the first time in decades, marking the first step towards healing their frayed relationship. From there, Jason would slowly but surely make his way back into the Bat family and soon be fully accepted by both those members who knew him as Robin and those who had only known him as the terrifying Red Hood. Even Tim Drake, whom Jason had vilified many times as Jason's replacement, would come to view the Red Hood as an older brother with time. These days, though the Red Hood will always be known as the most aggressive of Batman's partners, Jason has been well on his way to redemption. The Bat family has re-accepted the black sheep of the family back into their arms, and having the support and love of his family once more has been doing wonders for Jason's mental health. Though he will always disagree on how justice ought to be doled out, Jason has very recently been more cautious about resorting to killing, particularly when working alongside his fellow Robins and Batgirls. He and Bruce's relationship will perhaps never heal to the strength that it once had before Jason's death, but he and his father have come to terms with their differences as well as with their troubled past. It's not clear exactly what lies ahead for the Red Hood, but just as Batman saw in that young boy lifting tires out of the crime alley, there is no doubt that Jason's perseverance, passion, and well-tempered fury will propel him towards greatness wherever he finds himself next. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Is Jason your favorite Robin? Let us know in the comments. I'm Anthony Fan, and on behalf of all of us here at Plot Armor Comics, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.